The Beatlemania years marked the pinnacle of the Beatles' career, a hectic era where they catapulted to worldwide fame and solidified their position as the greatest band the world has ever known. In our last video, we talked about the rise of the Beatles, from their early days in Liverpool and their time in Hamburg, all the way to 1963 when they became the most famous band in Britain. Today's video is called the Beatlemania Years. These were the most hectic years for the Beatles, touring the world, recording music, making films, and they also had their fair share of trouble and controversy. Hello, by the way, and welcome to my Beatles YouTube channel. If you like the Beatles, please make sure you subscribe and you check out my other videos because you're definitely going to find them interesting. You can also buy my book, which is called From the Cavern to Abbey Road, A Journey Through the Beatles' Iconic Landmarks. But more on that later. So let's go! In 1963, the Beatles were experiencing a meteoric rise in England. Their debut album Please Please Me was released in March, swiftly followed by their initial two chart-topping singles From Me to You and She Loves You. On the 13th of October 1963, the Beatles appeared on a TV show called Val Parnell's Sunday Night at the London Palladium. The London Palladium was, and still is, one of London's most famous theatres. The Beatles' appearance on the TV show was very popular, with about 18 million people watching. It was after their performance at the London Palladium where they captured the attention of mainstream media, who coined the term Beatlemania to describe the scenes of screaming fans. On the 4th of November 1963, the Beatles played at the Royal Variety performance at the Prince of Wales Theatre in central London. The Beatles performed to a very distinguished audience, including members of the royal family, more specifically Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother. John Lennon didn't miss the opportunity to make a very cheeky comment. Before playing Twist and Shout, he said, "For the people in the cheaper seats, clap your hands. And the rest of you, if you just rattle your jewelry."
For our last number, I'd like to ask your help. For the people in the cheaper seats, clap your hands. And the rest of you, if you just rattle your jewelry.
Everyone seemed to find the joke quite funny, so everything was fine. After the show, the Beatles met Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother. On the 22nd of November 1963, the Beatles' second album titled With the Beatles was released. The same album was later released in America, but under the name Meet the Beatles. 1964 was a pivotal role in the story of the Beatles. The year started with an 18-day residency at the Olympia Theatre in Paris, ending on the 4th of February 1964. While they were in Paris on the 29th of January 1964, the Beatles recorded Can't Buy Me Love, as well as a German version of She Loves You and I Wanna Hold Your Hand. This marked the first and only recording of the Beatles outside England for EMI. On the 1st of February, the Beatles single I Want to Hold Your Hand reached number 1 on the Billboard charts, marking the Beatles' first number 1 single in America. 1 week later, on the 7th of February, the Beatles arrived at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City. It was the Beatles' first visit to America, and when they landed, they found the airport absolutely packed with Beatles fans. They definitely didn't expect such a reception. From the airport, they were escorted to the Plaza Hotel, where they stayed in and watched the chaos they caused on TV. The next day, they had a press call in Central Park. George Harrison couldn't attend because he was sick with tonsillitis. He stayed in the hotel while John, Paul and Ringo entertained reporters in Central Park. The 9th of February was a very important day in the Beatles' career, marking their first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. The day of the Beatles' television performance, there were thousands of teenage fans waiting up and down Broadway trying to get a glimpse of the Beatles entering and leaving the studio. Even though there were 50,000 requests for tickets to the show, there were only 728 seats available inside. Watching the Beatles' performance that night in the studio audience were John Lennon's wife, Cynthia, and George's sister, Louise Harrison. A record 73 million people watched the show. The Beatles sang 5 songs in 2 separate segments, including All My Loving, Till There Was You, She Loves You, I Saw Her Standing There, and I Want to Hold Your Hand. the Beatles made such an impact with their historic live appearance that it launched Beatlemania in the US, which still endures to this day. Earlier that day, the Beatles taped another performance for the Ed Sullivan Show, which was shown on Sunday the 23rd of February after the Beatles had returned to England. On Sunday the 16th of February, the Beatles appeared on the show again, live from Miami, Florida. After the show, the Beatles celebrated by going to the Playboy Club, conveniently located across the street from the Plaza Hotel. In 2023, Paul McCartney presented the Eye of the Storm exhibition in the National Portrait Gallery in London, in which he shown for the first time photographs he took with his own camera during the Beatles' 1964 tour, including pictures from Paris, London, New York, Washington DC and Miami. In July 1964, the Beatles' third album was released. It was called A Hard Day's Night, and also the Beatles' first film called A Hard Day's Night was released. Directed by Richard Lester, it was written by Alan Owen, and originally released by United Artists. The film portrays 36 hours in the lives of the group as they prepare for a television performance. My favorite part is the opening scene, where you can see the Beatles running from a crowd of fans. It was shot at Marylebone Station in London, and the bit where George Harrison trips and falls was not planned. That's why it's so funny. But not everything would be bad for George Harrison that day, as one of the extras was Pattie Boyd, later to become George Harrison's wife. On the 4th of December 1964, Beatles for Sale, the Beatles' fourth studio album, was released. Hi, sorry to interrupt the video. Just a very quick, very important announcement. I published a book. That's right, I published a book. It's called From the Cavern to Abbey Road, a journey through the Beatles' iconic landmarks. In this book, we see the story of the Beatles from the places where everything happened. Some of them are famous, like let's say Abbey Road Studios, and some of them perhaps not so famous, like for example the art gallery where John and Yoko met. The book is divided in 4 sections: Liverpool, Hamburg, London, and the last one is all around the world, so of course I called it Here, There and Everywhere. I put a lot of work and effort into this book, and it would help me so much if you grabbed a copy. It's available on Amazon all around the world, and it comes in 2 different formats. One is a digital book for Kindle, and the other one is the paperback, which is the one that I've got in my hands right now. So if you want your copy, please go to the link in the description. Thank you. Now back to the video. 1965 saw the release of many Beatles singles like Ticket to Ride and 8 Days a Week. And that summer, Help, the Beatles' second film, was released, also directed by Richard Lester. Help sees the group struggle to protect Ringo Starr from a sinister Eastern cult and a pair of mad scientists, all of whom are obsessed with obtaining a sacrificial ring sent to Ringo by a fan. The soundtrack for Help was released as the band's 5th studio album under the same name. On the 15th of August, the Beatles played their first stadium concert at the Shea Stadium in Queens, New York City. On the 26th of October 1965, upon request of Prime Minister Harold Wilson, the Beatles went to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen and became MBEs. This award caused a lot of controversy because up until then, MBEs were reserved for war heroes and things like that, but never pop musicians. To which John Lennon replied, "They got their awards for killing people. We got us for making music." 1965 ended with the release of Rubber Soul, the Beatles' 6th studio album, on the 3rd of December. 1966 started with a wedding, as George Harrison married Pattie Boyd on the 21st of January 1966. In a March 1966 interview, John Lennon said that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. This didn't cause much controversy in Britain. However, when the article was printed in the US, it caused a lot of backlash, especially in the southern states, where some people burned Beatles records and souvenirs. John Lennon later apologized and said that he was not comparing himself or the band to Jesus Christ, and he only meant to say that these days rock and roll music had more impact on young people than religion.
You know, I'm not saying that we're better or greater or comparing us with Jesus Christ as a person or God as a thing or whatever it is. You know, I just said what I said and it was wrong.
In the summer of 1966, the Beatles toured West Germany, Japan and the Philippines. On the 4th of July, The legendary band performed 2 concerts in front of over 80,000 fans at Rizal Memorial Football Stadium in Manila, capital of the Philippines. The Beatles declined an invitation to have breakfast with the First Lady, which caused a mob to attack the hotel where they were staying, and also being left with no police custody. The band never returned to the Philippines after the incident.
We did the concert. The next morning, we were in bed and somebody knocked on our door of the hotel suite saying, "Come on, you're supposed to be at the Palace." And we said, "No, we're not. We didn't have any engagement." And they said, "Turn on the TV." We turned the television on, and there it was, this big palace with lines of people. And the guy saying, "Well, they're still not here yet." But we were never supposed to be there. And so what they did was they said, "Beatles snub first family." And so consequently, he set the mob on us and tried to beat us up, which they did. They beat up a lot of people with us and wouldn't let the airplane leave Manila until Epstein, our manager, had to get off the plane and give back the money we earned at the concert.
On the 30th of May, their single Paperback Writer and Rain was released. And on the 5th of August 1966, the Beatles released their 7th studio album called Revolver. In Rubber Soul, we could already see how the music was getting a little bit more complex. However, it was in Revolver where the Beatles' music changed drastically, introducing things like strings for Eleanor Rigby, Indian music with George Harrison playing sitar in Love to You, the first reversed guitar solo in I'm Only Sleeping, a technique that they took even further for the experimental song Tomorrow Never Knows, playing all sorts of different sounds in reverse. Revolver also marked the first album with Jeff Emerick as the main sound engineer, as their previous sound engineer Norman Smith went on to become a solo artist. Jeff Emerick was largely responsible for the new sound the Beatles got in Revolver, experimenting with the limited technology they had at the time. At this point, the Beatles were fed up with touring. They were tired of not being able to hear themselves over the screaming fans. Their tours had grown too large and complex for Epstein to manage. Also, recent episodes like their narrow escape from the Philippines and the backlash they got in America after John Lennon's "bigger than Jesus" comment didn't help. But especially, the Beatles were now creating music that could not be played live with the technology they had available at the time. So they decided to give up touring and focus on spending much more time in the studio, allowing them to create albums like their masterpiece Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and embarked on various new projects. In the next video, we'll focus on the Beatles' psychedelic years. On the 29th of August 1966, the Beatles played their last paid gig at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, marking the end of an era. The Beatlemania Years marked the pinnacle of the Beatles' career, a hectic era where they catapulted to worldwide fame and solidified their position as the greatest band the world has ever known. Okay, there you go, that was the Beatlemania Years. I work as a cruise ship musician, and of course I talk a lot about the Beatles during my shows, and many guests told me that they had the chance to see the Beatles play live. Some of them have even met them, and I always like to hear these stories, so if you have any stories like that, please let me know in the comments. In the next video, we'll talk about the Beatles' psychedelic years. If you're watching this video sometime in the future, chances are our next video is already uploaded. In that case, I'm gonna leave it somewhere here. If you watched this video when it first came out, thank you, but you're gonna have to wait a few days until the next video comes out. So this is pretty much it for now. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also follow me on Instagram or Facebook. There is a PayPal link for donations. Of course, every donation will be absolutely appreciated. You can buy my book. Actually, that would make me very happy indeed. The Amazon link is in the description. Or the free option is just to subscribe to this YouTube channel and maybe click the bell icon so you're the first to know when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Well, I'm afraid that's us run out of time.
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
sorry.
Well,
Sorry.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I give my heart to you, I must be sure from the very